As many of you know, it's much easier to do this when someone else is directing a show. Opening nights are terribly nervous things for directors. They're also deeply emotional things, and we made jokes about this today. We had our whole note session today was a joke, an extended sort of 3-hour joke of me behaving emotionally badly because I was having to leave the nest of the production. And so so I lashed out at my lighting designer. Now, the reason this was funny, that I could have little moments of peak today, was because, and I say this absolutely with no hyperbole, this was the single most joyous rehearsal process I have ever been through in my life. Every moment of this was pure joy, creation, delight. We were just talking about it. Michelle was talking about it. The room was so fun. There was not a single moment of anxiety in 6 weeks, not a single moment of anxiety. There was not a single moment of temper from anyone, nobody, because, and here's my analysis on this, every actor in the room has their script in hand. It's amazing what happens to the tenor of a room when no actor has a moment of worry about whether they're going to remember a line. And also, they don't worry, in this particular case, neither do they worry about, who am I? Where does my character fit into this story? Because what we are doing is recreating in audio form Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. This is not a radio version of It's a Wonderful Life as if it was a novel that we're doing. This is actually capturing Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. So you should see in your mind Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart. You should see images from the movie George on the Bridge. You should picture Clarence Oddbody in his little nightshirt after they've jumped into the water. So if you know the movie, put up your hand if you know the movie. So not everyone does. Put up your hand if you don't. And that's fine. Right. So and this will be about how it breaks down. About 80% of the audience will know the movie intimately, and about 20% won't. You're all going to be very well taken care of. The story is very clear. It's beautifully acted. It's gorgeous. But for those of you who know the movie, you don't have to give it up. It's there. You actually get to bring that with you. And this is what's so joyous about this experience, is you actually get to bring all that nostalgia with you, and you get to hold on to your original while at the same time seeing a piece of theater that is quite startlingly original. Because what we did over the last 6 weeks was start with an adaptation on paper, a rough adaptation of the movie into a radio form. It has commercials, so it says commercial break here. So what did I do? I said on Monday, Thursday is deadline, everybody, to the cast, I would say. Thursday, you have to bring in your commercials for auditions. And I would say, think of sponsors, and think of Soulpepper as a sponsor. Figure it out, because we're set in a 1940s radio studio, so do what you want. And they came in and they auditioned, and depending on how the group felt and if they responded really strongly, we would keep that commercial and that commercial. So you're going to see several commercials up there. I should tell you that any commercial you see during the broadcast, the person who is delivering the commercial wrote that commercial. We had nothing to do with the actor that came up with it, said, I've got an idea, can I do it? So you'll see that dotted throughout, and that was the spirit of the thing, is bring what you have. Bring it to the room. You will also hear, now here's the thing, we're setting it in the 40s. Lorenzo has created a beautiful set that seems to be, the room seems to be, the whole theater seems to be designed around his set. That's when this kind of a set really works. When you get kind of this single picture set, this proscenium set, where you walk into the room and you go, okay, so they started with that and then they built the theater around it. That's what Lorenzo's set looks like. It also sets you immediately in a time and place. It also immediately evokes a kind of nostalgia, and that's the particular subtle genius of his work in this. Then you have when people come on, they bring in their gorgeous costumes. They bring a sense of nostalgia in the room. And we all look at it and go, oh, I wish I could wear something that's cut like that, or I remember the day when, or oh, that reminds me of, and all those wonderful things, and all that starts to happen. And we are evoking a time when radio drama was a wonderful way that Americans and Canadians and people around that would get together to share stories. And you remember the moment. If you don't remember the moment, you remember pictures of your parents or stories from your parents, or you may remember photos you have seen of families gathered around an old-style radio, watching the radio, hearing the story, hearing the sound effects, and supplying all of the flesh and blood around the skeletal story. Hearing a sound, oh, this doesn't work. I've been so used to this is supposed to do something. But you hear someone breathing across a microphone and you see trees swaying in a wind. And the beautiful thing about this form of radio drama is, and to see it live is, here's why to me this is so deeply theatrical, is if we go back to probably where we can imagine theater started, the earliest theatrical performance that we can imagine as we think back to atavistic sources, we think, okay, the first one was probably when someone got up to move a new log onto the fire, and from the fire a shadow was cast against that wall, and the guy moving the fire looks just like a bear or a woolly mammoth. And people go, oh, look. Or actually what they would say in that day, I've done the research, is, ooh, ooh. And at that moment, everybody sees not only the shape, but when they see the shape, they imagine the context, yes? And this is the beginning of what it is, and this is the roots of how we tell stories, is to suggest and let the people around the campfire jump in and fill in the Platonic ideal of what surrounds that mammoth. And for a 3-year-old, it might be primary colors. And for an 80-year-old, it might be hard to see. But there is everybody has their own idea of what fills around. So what you get as you watch this show is you're listening to sounds, you're watching a tremendous company create an experience and create a story that we know and love. And we can either, at any moment, decide to close our eyes, which I encourage you to do at some point and listen, and you can fill in images from the movie, or you can fill in images of what you think that scene looks like. And when you're doing that, just realize that that is the impulse that theater runs on. That, what you are doing, when you're filling that in, that is the fuel that fills all of our tanks. That's theater. And that's what theater alone can do. Film doesn't do that to you. Film shows you everything. And you decide whether you liked it or not. Oh, I love the art direction. No one is going to say in this, I love the art direction. I loved the bridge scene. I thought the lighting, you will see a remarkably designed production. But the pictures and the flesh and blood, as I say, around the story will be yours, and that's what I love about this piece, that you are being invited into the creation of the theater. And in that sense, you go back to be one of those children or those parents sitting around looking at that radio and imagining the world around it. Okay, we got a few more minutes. Trying to think of what else I want to tell you. No, I just want to think, what else do I want to talk? I want to talk about the actors. One of the reasons it's been so joyful is that we have on the stage out there, we have a 23-year-old actor named Dan Mousseau, who is currently a member of the Academy. He's the youngest person on that stage. He's 23 years old. We also have on that stage someone who next March turns 75, and that's William Webster. And we have Oliver Dennis up there, and we have Diego Matamoros up there, and then we have several generations of the Academy. We have the story essentially being carried mostly by our wonderful Gregory Prest, who was in our second Academy, supported ably by Raquel Duffy as Mary. And the two of them are at the center of the story, and then Oliver. And Bill is there to support, and Diego is there to support, and Dan is there to support, and his fellow members of the Academy, that Mumbi and Alexandra and Michelle are up there. And they are all, as they were for 6 weeks, those young people have watched the laughter, the camaraderie, the discipline, the skill, the sense that happens, and I will say this, uniquely in this company. I can guarantee you this is a unique company. I do believe, and this last 6 weeks in this hall has convinced me of this more than any 6 weeks I've spent, when I have sat in wonder and watched Diego Matamoros and Oliver Dennis, both who chose when they had a place to sit on stage. Everyone's on stage the whole time. They both chose the two farthest seats in the shadow in the corner. And they chose to sit there because that's all they need to do. And when their deal is up, they come up and they do it expertly, and they go back and they love and they watch and they support, and they show day after day examples that the young people pick up and do, and everyone on that stage is bringing their best, and all of them are working as a unit comprised of a community through the ages of these individuals, through the generations. This, to me, has been an extraordinary thing to witness. And the last thing I'll say about our conceit is, in the 1940s, if you'd gone and you'd watched a radio program like this, you would have seen one man, maybe two, at a table, and it would have been a man at a table with a bunch of instruments to sound like things. And a lot of them would be machines that approach the sound of the thing. So it might be a motor that sounds like a car motor, so you put a microphone on a motor to sound like a car motor, etc. And in this production, it's the one thing that so it looks like 1946, the actors are dressed like 1946, but the leap we've taken is we've said to these 16 people, okay guys, you make all the sounds. So here's what I will say. And we brought it forward. So you will see actors bring up a bunch of celery to make a sound. You'll see what it is. See what it is. You see actors using their mouths. Someone, Bill Webster, in fact, at some point does this. You'll see him do this. You'll wait and see what that's supposed to be. And this was all I did, and they all contribute, and Bill Webster was the one most eager to contribute every time. No matter what the sound, Bill would say, I'll do it. And that's where we broke. That's where the period accuracy is broken, because it's much more theatrical, and it warms our heart much more to see a 75-year-old man doing this next to a 23-year-old doing this or whatever. And to me, that's the magic of this piece. We've had 5 previews now, and people leap to their feet and love it and feel so warm. And it's a story that I think, as you listen to it, you will find, because this is probably the first time this Christmas you've seen It's a Wonderful Life, and the world is feeling like a slightly different world. Our first day of rehearsal was November 8th of 2016. Our first day of rehearsal, we read this, and we read this Frank Capra piece. Frank Capra, born in 1897, dies in 1991, and becomes Capra-esque, has a particular feeling. It's about this sort of championship of the common man, this notion that the better angels of our nature can actually prevail over greed, etc. This is kind of the defining ethos of a Frank Capra film. And here we are reading this script on the day that we see the world going in a particular way, and the next day, the second day, we came in and we screened Capra's film in a kind of Stygian gloom on our souls as we realized the world was a very different place, and we heard the play in a very different way. So all of that also adds to it. Listen to how much of the language coming out of Diego's character, for instance, sounds eerily familiar to what we've been hearing a lot in the media of late. Someone actually said to me, is he doing an imitation? And he's not doing anything like an imitation of any president. But you hear the words and you think, oh my goodness, it's like it was written for now. So these are things I want you to think about. I want you to think about, too, while you're watching, how lucky we are to have that company up on the stage. Look at those generations up on the stage, and realize, all of you that are here, how there's so many people as I look around that are intimately responsible for the reality that I've been talking about. There are people in this room right now at this dinner who make what we're going to see possible, and we're all so deeply grateful for that. So to our artists who worked on this, to all of you, a very, very Merry Christmas, and I hope you find as much joy in what you see tonight as I have in helping and guiding the creation of it. So thank you very, very much, and we'll see you in a few minutes.